Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kosietu from the Research Capacity Development Unit at the Postgraduate School. I'm happy to be your moderator for today's session on the workshop Building Resilience and Coping with Academic Rejection. Our facilitator for today is Dr. Kenny Chuarawara. Colleagues, before I move on with introducing the session, firstly, I would like to welcome all of you and thanking you for taking your time, and more especially our facilitator for today, Dr. Kenny. Dr. Kenny, thank you so much for taking your time. I would like to start by just highlighting the housekeeping rules. Uh, Colleagues, you are more than welcome to ask question during the session or just stop Dr. Kenny anytime when you do have a question. Just use a raise hand or just type your question under the chat, and then I'll notify Dr. Kenny that there is a question on the chat or someone has raised a hand. The workshop is being recorded, and the resources, which include the recording as well as the presentation slide, will be shared to your respective Moodle communities, which is the supervisor, the postdoctoral communities. Um, Allow me, colleagues, to go through over Dr. Kenny's bio. Dr. Kenny Chuarawara is a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Johannesburg. He has a wealth of knowledge and experience in giving detailed oral and written feedback. He has worked as a writing consultant at 3 different universities for over 10 years. He consults with students across all faculties and schools, on site and online consultations. Dr. Kenny also works in the Research Capacity Development Unit as a writing consultant. Uh, that was the bio for Dr. Kenny, colleagues. Another announcement that I would like to pass is that I'll be sharing the feedback evaluation link on the chat. We ask you to please fill in that feedback evaluation that help us in organizing workshops of this kind, as well as to give feedback to our facilitators, as well as for us to report. The feedback will just take less than 3 minutes. So in your spare time, we ask you, colleagues, to fill that feedback. I will enable all your mics in the meantime. And if you do have a question, feel free to raise your hand and unmute yourself to ask question. Thank you so much, colleagues. Dr. Kenny, you can start the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nkosi, for that generous introduction, and thank you so much, colleagues, for joining, and I really appreciate the opportunity. So as you have heard, my name is Kenny Chiwarawara, and it's really an honor today to speak to you about things that I'm sure you know about already, but I will, I think, hopefully stimulate you and try to ask some questions that we can consider together as we discuss this very important issue around building resilience and coping with academic rejection. So I'm going to turn off the mic, the video. I just wanted to show you that actually I exist, and that I am here speaking to you, but I'm going to turn off the camera now to save the data. All right. So if you have any questions, as the moderator, of course, just said now, please feel very free to stop me at any time, to raise your hand. If for some reason your hand has not been recognized, you're also welcome to just jump in. I actually want to just make this one more of a very informal talk and discussion. I know I'm talking to colleagues, some more senior than I am. So I think it's important for us to help each other, and just feel free to jump in, and we continue like that. So I'm going to just introduce who an academic is, and I know that you already know that, but I'm going to just center my talk around that. Who is an academic? Because we are dealing here with building resilience and coping with academic rejection. So who is this academic who should build this resilience and who should cope with academic rejection? Then I'll talk about the key roles of an academic, and I'm thinking here about teaching and learning, research and innovation, community engagement. So I think about how these different roles that an academic occupies sometimes leads them to be discouraged and to feel like walking away, and then the need to keep coping and to bounce back, to be resilient, to continue going after different difficulties and setbacks. And then as I do so, I will also bring in reflections, but it would be really helpful to hear what the colleagues think throughout, and to add your own views, and we continue like that. Perhaps another option would be to kind of get a sense of who is in the room. I wonder, Nkosi, whether it's possible to, for those who are willing, to just tell me who they are and what they are expecting, and then we can proceed.
Yes, Dr. Kenny, that's possible. Colleagues, just unmute your mic or just type in the chat box, and then, yeah, we will take it from there.
No pressure, though. Those who don't want to say, it's not a problem at all. But in case some people want to introduce themselves as well, please feel free to do so.
Hi, Dr. Kenny. I hope you're well.
Yes.
Thank you for setting up this presentation today. My name is Lorenzo David, and I'm hoping from this presentation that I'll just be able to get a better idea of, shall we say, what is the norm? Because sometimes coming in as a new academic, we expect that, we go through our experimental process, we write up a paper, and we are always hopeful that the paper will be accepted, maybe to the first journal that we send. So I just want to understand more about the process, and as well as how do we deal with, a rejection and sometimes the negative comments that we get from reviewers. Just put things in perspective and just helps me to prepare for hopefully future in academia. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And welcome, and thank you for the invitation, by the way. Dr. Lorenzo is the one coordinating this, so I want to appreciate him for inviting me to speak. I saw a chat there from Tanya. Kosi, do you mind reading it? I can't quite see anything now. It just popped here.
Yes, Doc. There is a chat from Tanya. Good morning, colleagues. I am Tanya Sani, a PhD student. I work at the CSDA at UJ.
Welcome, Tanya. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Most welcome. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll go next. Morning, everyone. I'm Musa. I've completed my PhD studies already, but I'm a new recruit at UJ, so I just want to get acquainted with the UJ ways. Thank you.
Welcome and congratulations on completing your PhD and on joining the University of Johannesburg. Welcome.
Thank you.
Maybe two more, or whoever is still in the room, if they want to. It says going once, going twice. It's like, it's an option.
Yes, there is another chat from Atia. Morning, I am a PhD student, only starting to understand the publishing landscape now, worried about publishing and rejection because I recently heard the phrase publish or perish.
Thank you for that. Publish or perish. Okay, thank you. You said the name is Atia?
Yes, Atia Motalo.
Okay, thank you.
And there is a hand from Sharon. Sharon, you can go ahead.
I'm Sharon. I think I am everything that's on the slide in front of us. So I'm a lecturer in the Department of Psychology. I've published, I published, I see a comment on publish or perish. That's always the fear. And the rejections never get any, yeah, it just doesn't get any. And the more you publish every year, but it's difficult to take in the rejection. And I think I'm here for the containment and just the communal support around that. I'm new at UJ. It's been a year. I'm from UP. I spent 5 years there. So, and I am exhausted. The publishing or perishing and then teaching and learning and everything that is on the slide in front of us, it's quite exhausting. So I am depleted. I have turned my PhD into a book, which was accepted and it's in print at UJ Press. So that's been exciting. But I think as an academic, there's no time to enjoy your successes. So you're always on edge and you're thinking, I've done this for this year, publish or perish. What am I doing next year? So I'm just here for the support. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, and welcome to you, Jay. Of course, you've been around a little bit, but
Thank you.
and congratulations on your book. That's quite a feat. It's not a small thing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I think you mentioned something around communal support, and I think that's something very vital. The support that we can get, and I think you have already touched on the element that we need to also talk about, like communal support, that collegial support. How do you draw strength from others who are going through the same kinds of issues you are going through? As you'll see soon, I think one of the aspects I talk about is that, and of course this is directed to everyone, that this feeling, for example, that you have, feeling exhausted, feeling depleted, feeling really tired. I mean, it's as if you are describing me. It's as if you are describing many people that I come across at the university who tell me, I just can't wait to be on holidays. It's at the end of the year and people feel really tired. Tia said something around, I don't know, was it, yes, publish or I think it's Musa, publish or perish. And I think we'll talk about some of these elements as well, and perhaps how we can, if possible, try to reduce the pressure that is sometimes imposed by others, but sometimes that we impose on ourselves. So maybe we'll touch on that, and please feel free anytime to jump in anytime and do make any additions and even subtractions, everyone, please. Yeah. Do we still have another one who wants to jump in?
On the chat, there is nothing, Doc. So I think we are good to go.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for the introductions. I think it gives me a sense of who is in the room and what to focus on and how to proceed. I have a sense that we do have a number of PhD students or people who are about to complete their PhDs or who have completed their PhDs. If I'm not mistaken, I see some of you might already be staff members, but there are some that are still studying full time. And I do know of some colleagues who are already lecturers or coordinators working in different capacities. Okay, so I will try to talk a little bit to people who perhaps are starting out, and then also move into those who have started already. I think there's nothing wrong with reminders. I always like to be reminded of certain things that some of them I already know, but I think it's quite key to be reminded. All right. So this is an academic journey. And I have something here that says a bad start isn't a bad finish. I'm sure you have seen this before somewhere. So, I was thinking about this presentation. I was just thinking, as I said, I want to make it informal, but I was thinking that we are towards the end of the year. We are really drawing towards the end of the year. And I'm just thinking about reflecting, and I wanted to think about how this year has been for you. And some of you have already mentioned that it has been tiring, it's been really draining. which is almost like, the story of our lives, every year it's almost like that, with the teaching, with the research, with the admin work that it has to be done, with community engagement, all these different kinds of things. And I haven't even talked about family and other issues that you face outside of the academic community. So how has this year been for you? Now, for some, this year was awesome. Perhaps you won a scholarship or a funding, project that you had applied for. Maybe several of your articles were published, or just one article was accepted, and it's not something small at all. You see why I say that. For those perhaps who haven't started publishing, you will see why I'm saying that even one article, even submitting it, is an achievement, because there is a lot that gets in before you submit that manuscript for consideration. So perhaps some of you have submitted, or your papers have been accepted, or some of you got an NRF rating, and for those who want to consider it, please be aware that the NRF rating is still open, and you can submit your NRF application for consideration. And there are different categories, and the people at the university who can provide more information. There's a department that actually assists with that. Perhaps your NRF application was renewed. Our colleague Sharon, the book is going to be published soon. So those are wonderful things. Maybe your students, if you are supervising, passed, or they graduated, or their vivas were successfully held. Hopefully this will continue, this kind of success and the trajectory that I just painted now. I hope it continues into 2025 and beyond. We all love those wonderful stories. For some, however, maybe the year was very difficult. Perhaps you did not win the scholarship that you so desperately wanted. Maybe your NRF application was unsuccessful. Maybe your articles were not well received. Maybe they were rejected, or you're asked to revise and resubmit over and over again. And I've faced that myself. And if I get time, I'll show you some of, you can see, when I submitted, when the reviews, the outcome came back, and I had to resubmit, and it takes long. And yeah, it's quite a process. So that's something to consider, that the life of an academic is really a journey. And this year might have been a bad year, but it doesn't mean that we stop running. We keep on running, because we don't know how it will end, and hopefully it will end well. So let me talk then about resilience, because really we are talking about building resilience and coping with academic rejection. So what is resilience? I checked this online, and I just came up, I found this very interesting definition: the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly. And I like that, to recover quickly from difficulties. And that part around recovering quickly is quite important, because, and I'm going to be jumping ahead of myself so that I don't forget certain things, but I'm thinking about this recovering quickly around, getting sometimes very nasty, if I can use that word, nasty comments from reviewers. Some of them are very cheeky, and they can, as if they're scolding you, really, they can. I remember one mentor of mine saying that at first, when you were starting out, someone said, for someone trying to send this to an international journal, this is really not the standard we are expecting. And he said, I really felt demeaned. I felt that, your self, esteem, gets bruised. Your confidence is affected. But the issues around recovering quickly from such a setback. And I think I just want to, as I said, it will be informal, so I jump forward and backwards and all that. But I think it helps, and I just need to pause here and say that it helps when you receive your comments from the reviewers, not to respond right away, especially if they are not good comments. If they say, well, you have to revise and resubmit, or the introduction was not well developed, and this is not there, and that is not there, and all that. And I think sometimes the initial thinking is to defend yourself and to even, write back angrily and all that. But I think it helps to kind of give yourself time to cool off, maybe a day or two before you even respond. If you want to respond, you can, but just, I think it's better to just allow it to, allow yourself to, settle down a little bit. So then the next day you can come back to the comments. I remember even with my PhD supervisor, sometimes I would get comments from him and I would just, go and sleep, because they were so, kind of, I feel like, okay, this is too much here. But that's the nature of this kind of the academia that we find ourselves in. You do need to have that thick skin, get those kinds of strategies where you kind of walk away from it and come back later, you bounce back and try to see how you can navigate what is before you. And then the other definition says that the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape. So somehow, the comments and whatever would have happened, you've applied for funding, you didn't get the funding and you really wanted that funding, or you submitted an article that you thought you had really argued your case. And now they tell you that there is nothing really to it and you can't even submit here. We won't even consider it again here or something in this journal. So you want to spring back from that because it's as if you have been crushed really, and you have. But you want to spring back. How do you spring back? And so those are the kinds of issues that I'll be talking about and how to cope with that in doing that as well. So the three, any questions, by the way, before I continue? Any questions or additions or comments you want to make? If there's nothing, silence is a sign of agreement. I would assume then that everything seems to be fine for now. All right, so I talked about the three key roles of an academic. I'm not saying these are the only ones. In fact, even this talk is not comprehensive. I touch on a few aspects that I think will be helpful. So the first one is teaching and learning. And so you know that balancing teaching, and I said there's also research and innovation, and then there is community engagement, there's admin work. So balancing all that becomes really tricky and can affect some aspects of your other roles. But in terms of teaching and learning, you impart knowledge, you stimulate thinking, you mentor students. So you are lecturing and at UJ and other universities in South Africa, sometimes very huge classes, sometimes 400 students, 500 students, 600 students that you teach. And I've had that experience myself teaching sometimes a very huge class, like 600 students. And you have to mark, you have to do all that. Now, teaching itself can be really challenging. Sometimes you're teaching students who are discouraged, and that discouragement might then have an effect or an impact on you. Students sometimes are discouraged because of high unemployment, and sometimes they think about the degree they are taking and they're thinking, how will this help? And so they already have an attitude that they have because they are concerned, rightly so, about their prospects after this degree. And perhaps because of their discouragement, because of their socioeconomic realities that they face and challenges which impact on their studies and other things as well. Teaching can be challenging because when you are teaching these discouraged individuals, sometimes it's really a struggle. I had a case one time where after teaching, I then gave people a chance, to say, if you have not submitted anything, or if you're not happy with a certain mark, I give you this time to, come to me and talk to me about it or write to me. And then we can see if there is merit to your challenge. And then we can, if you haven't submitted, I will give you a chance to submit. A few came. And then after, when the marks were submitted already and they were about to be, someone says, well, I don't have any mark for summative 3. And I'm thinking, wow, how do I then handle this? Because now you have to mark, and because I had to come up with a plan and, ask them to write and submit and all that. But But sometimes teaching people who are discouraged can then have an impact on you as well, because it reflects on you, on your teaching as well. Then AI, we know that AI has taken us by storm. It can be an ally or an enemy, depending on where you sit or how you use it. But some students are not using AI responsibly and ethically. And so sometimes that can really be challenging for you as an academic dealing with these students. And sometimes students feel very overly entitled. They don't want to do the work, but they want high marks. And sometimes if care is not taken, there could be manipulation here and there for you to be able to, because they can tell you a story which is quite important to say, well, if I fail now, I won't get some, scholarship that I was on or some bursary that I was on. So it's now like a moral dilemma. You want to help, but you can't also just dish out marks if nothing was done. And so, how do you navigate these kinds of things as an academic? And I talk in some place that I think it's helpful to be firm as well, to be caring, but to be firm as well, so that we raise responsible citizens who know that it's important to show the different responsibilities. Sometimes the teaching load itself, the marking, the supervision that you need to do, sometimes the work follows you home. And that can really have an impact on you as an individual, on your family, or on your health. I do know that Dr. Lorenzo spoke 2 days ago about work-life balance in academia. So if that balance is not provided, then sometimes you will struggle to build that risk to come back, because you're really drowning in a lot of work. Okay, so those are some of the elements that we face. And so these factors that I've talked about and many others can discourage an academic. How many teachers and lecturers are burnt out? You feel really exhausted and that you can't do anything else. You really feel, no, there is nothing else I can give. I'm really, really tired. And I think it's also important for us to be mindful of those limitations we have, and that there are certain things we can't do. I think understanding that is very helpful in trying to come back and to spring back into force. So many other people, I think, have considered, I wish I had time to actually look at the statistics, but I do know that I'm aware that many people have considered, or academics have considered, walking away due to the pressure that academia presents. And so this kind of makes one feel very discouraged, very tired. The question then is, how do we cope and how do we continue despite these challenges that I have talked about? And I would have wanted to ask, where we are now in terms of how do you go about it? How do you go about coping with these kinds of things? What do you do in order for you to press on, to continue? I just have a few things here that I thought of. I think some of the things are more internal that you can do yourself. Then there are others that are more external. But something that you can do yourself, I think, is to remind yourself of the sense of purpose and calling in doing this teaching, imparting knowledge and sharing and molding these, some of them young minds that you are also helping them to think and to be critical thinkers and readers and writers. So you are doing something. Sometimes, we come across, these comments, someone saying, this makes a lot of sense, and thank you so much for helping me understand these kinds of things. Now I have a better sense of the world, I have a better sense of why things unfold the way they do. So there is a sense in which you are helping, and perhaps sometimes it helps you when you remind yourself of the contribution you are making. So there is that second part, the sense of contribution, that you are molding in some way someone's life. And that, I think, it should also help us to feel a sense of fulfillment when it comes to the teaching, though it can be really demanding with a lot of work. I can honestly tell you that when I was teaching that huge class, it was just not possible for me to write during that time. I mean, I didn't have time to write because I needed to set tests, to mark them, set assignments, have consultations, prepare for lectures, all that. It has, all those kinds of things have an impact on your writing. But then you have to comfort yourself and say, it's not just about the publishing and perishing, but I'm also teaching, I'm helping other, a new crop of leaders that I'm also helping. And perhaps that kind of reminder helps. And also thinking about why, in fact, you joined the academic community. What is it that led you to come here? Hopefully, it's not just about the money. Well, the money is not really that much anyway. But hopefully, there are other issues that you are concerned about in terms of imparting knowledge and helping and raising other people. So there is need then to build internal muscles. So that you are able to say, well, this has happened to me, but I can still continue. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's easy to talk about things, but it's difficult to leave them out, really. But of course, I mentioned here that it's important to also draw on the strength and the examples of others. And I think already Sharon mentioned that, came for that communal support. And that communal support is quite interesting. I remember one time talking to a PhD student at the postgraduate school, and she was saying that I think we need a community of PhD students who can just come together, not to talk about the academic life, but just to talk about just the life that we are living and the experiences we have. So that kind of community, it can be very helpful, because then you realize you're not the only one going through what you are going through. People go through them at different times, but it's helpful to know that I'm not alone in whatever I'm going through. Okay, so that was the part around the teaching, and some of you did not find this very interesting, because some of you maybe are not teaching at the moment, but maybe someday you'll be teaching, and you'll begin to see the amount of work because you are in a sense a student as well. You really have to research, you have to come prepared, you have to read people's work and all that. So it's quite demanding, and it can demoralize you sometimes, but it can also help you when you know what you are doing and why you are doing it. But the other element of an academic is research and innovation. And I'll spend a little bit of time here, really. I'll focus on this, because the third one, I won't really spend 2 minutes on it, the community engagement. But I'll focus on this because I want to talk about two elements here around articles and then funding proposals and funding calls. I know that Dr. David, you asked about a very important question around how to deal with these comments and articles, and I know already about that, but I think that's a very good question for us all to just reflect on. All right, so as you know, and I'm already preaching to the choir now, as you know, research requires immense discipline. I already said that because I was teaching, it was so hard for me to write anything, and I had to make peace with it, to say at that particular point I wasn't going to be writing a lot. Because I'm only one person. There's so much I can do. I mean, but then there will come a time then when you need to set aside, time to write and to research and write. So this requires a lot of discipline to plan. What is it that you want to write? To think about ideas, to craft an argument, perhaps even before then, to conduct research. It's demanding to conduct research, to go into, depending on how your research is conducted, but it's demanding if you are to go into a particular community and interview people, hand out questionnaires, if you have to call people, if you have to read books and articles and all that. It's hard work. So I think we need to be mindful of this. Sometimes as well, we set unrealistic expectations, which then demoralize us. And we need to then learn how to bounce back after those kinds of setbacks. You said that your book is, or you converted your PhD, that's Sharon, you converted your PhD into a book. So that's awesome. I've been trying to finish my book proposal. I'm almost there, but something just comes up and I can't quite finish, but I'm almost there. But we need to be mindful of the discipline required and the competing demands when it comes to research and innovation. to develop a manuscript itself and think about what are the different elements that should be here. And I think you can try that for those of you who haven't started writing, who don't have any manuscript. Perhaps you could try to develop something from your master's. If you are still doing a PhD, test from your master's. You can think about, how do I develop a manuscript from my master's? And that's part of the work we do at the postgraduate school. You can book with us. We talk with you through how to go about that, and we check your, and you can then develop something, and we assist you to do that as well, working alongside you. Also, when you're thinking about research, you want to choose, where am I going to send my manuscript or my article? What is that right dissemination outlet? Is it going to be a journal? Is it going to be a book somewhere? Where should I send it? Which journal should I submit? And I'll touch on that as well very soon. I've already mentioned. Any questions, by the way, as I run through this? Because I sometimes feel like I'm talking nonstop, and I want to avoid just talking. Any questions or comment that you want to add?
Good morning. I am Miriam Siluma. I'm one of the PhD candidates. I'm not sure if people can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
I'm currently in a writing retreat, and I find it so refreshing, out of the academic institution, out of campus, and then I can think deeply about things. But I feel very, should I say, consoled to hear that the things that I'm going through as an academic and everything that I have to balance, it's not something that only occurs in me. It's something that other academics also experience, especially the question of burnout, the question of having teaching loads that are, very, very high, that I can relate to very, very well. And the issue of bouncing back from the comment, I can, relate to that. But I must say that I have gained a lot in terms of the comments that my supervisor gives me, the ones that make me, I actually get on the other side thinking, you know what, it was worth it. Yeah, I just wanted to share that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. And I think this is quite helpful. And I'm going to talk again about the articles and the comments, but that's quite helpful. You raise something so important that, yes, we can feel that we have been attacked, or why didn't they accept this? But, it's called a peer review, and once it goes through that, you feel also a sense of fulfillment that I put out ideas there, and colleagues feel that they are important. They made comments, and now they've accepted after working on this. And often, the paper is much stronger after, the comments, if you manage to, where possible, to effect those changes. Of course, you can also say, well, thank you for these comments, but I think 1, 2, 3, you are also allowed to do that. I think we'll touch on that as well. But like you said, sometimes we don't see certain things, and so the reviewers sometimes pick up things that we would not have seen. I'm reviewing right now, and I've picked some few things that I really feel strongly they were supposed to say in the introduction, and I think the paper will benefit from that. It's not like I'm going to say, well, this person it must be rejected, but I'm just going to point out that they have to consider working on these kinds of things. So those kinds of, I think also having, like you mentioned now, having a positive view of the peer review process is quite helpful. But I may have to pause there and say as well, having a very a good understanding of that peer review as well is also helpful. And I was reading in preparation, there was one scholar who was saying, you also need to know that there's that reviewer, that the second reviewer, some of them are enemies, so to speak, who perhaps want to also say what you are saying. And so sometimes some of them just find a way of saying, well, you should not have done this, you're supposed to do this. And sometimes you must also be aware that, reviewers are also people. They can make mistakes, they can be biased as well. So sometimes, and they were giving an example of Nobel Prize winners, that some of them, their work had been rejected in different journals. But later, maybe they were ahead of their time. Later, people started to embrace that. So sometimes when you are presenting something that really goes against the grain, sometimes it's not accepted at that particular point. And soon we'll talk about, finding a home. Perhaps it's not about the quality of the work. Maybe the quality is good, but where you have sent it is not where this argument would really sit well. And so there are a number of different aspects. And I'm glad that, you actually mentioned as well that, we go through these kinds of things together. And so I think having colleagues that you openly talk, to and with, about these kinds of things, sometimes you feel refreshed to know that you are not alone. Even the best of the best go through that. Even the rejections of articles, even established professors still face that. We wrote another article with one established professor in Cape Town, and the article was rejected, and we had to rework it and submit it somewhere else. It was accepted there and all that. So, it was interesting to see that, and I was still doing PhD then, but it was interesting to see that, no, it's not the end of the world. There are people who are also going through what we go through. So if one is to think about the argument, if you have an argument for your article, perhaps another day one would talk about really developing an article and all that. But I just took out a few aspects that deal with aspects of bouncing back and copying, but also what to do here and how to go about it. Say, for example, you have taken something from your master's work and you've figured out what is the argument really here. What is it that you are saying that you think can add to the conversations that are going on in your own field? So you have an argument. Now what? You want to think about, where does this argument fit? In other words, where will this argument find a home? It's possible to have a very good argument, but if you send some argument around violence and you send it to something around literature which doesn't deal with violence, chances are they won't accept it, because though it's a good article, it's not really relevant to this particular journal that you have sent. So that discipline I spoke about, there is this planning that has to go into it, looking at different articles. At the moment, there's a colleague in Australia. She just completed a PhD, but she has been asking me now, where can I send? Which one of these? And I talk about, well, the advantages of this one, the disadvantages and all that. It's important maybe to talk to other people as well when you are considering these different journals where to submit, so that you kind of figure out where to submit. And I will talk again about that very soon. So, but is it a journal that you're going to submit to? Is it going to be a book chapter? Or is it a call for articles? Sometimes these call for articles are very helpful because they have a time. They know that by this time we want an abstract to have been submitted. By this time we want the full manuscript. By this time, whatever. And so it's not like just submitting a code submission somewhere, which might take years. In my case, sometimes 2 years, as I will show you soon, that sometimes this process can take long. Of course, when you are doing this, you want to consider the purpose of the journal, the scope, the aims and objectives. What are those guidelines to the authors? Things like even the referencing style, because some of these things can lead to your article being sent back to you because you have not conformed yourselves to the requirements of that particular journal. I remember sending one article to one journal, and they were saying, we have since changed how we go about our introductions. We no longer have a section on methodology somewhere. We now put it in the introduction. Now that's what they are now doing. But when I submitted first, a long time ago, they were not doing that. But because they took long to get to it, and so they had changed certain things, and so we need to also be mindful of that. But we mustn't be caught, where we say you haven't even read what is required here. because that might lead to a reject as well. Or, yeah, you know. And so the decisions that are often then made when you submit your manuscript, and I'm sure you know this, but for those who are not aware, you know, there are a number of options, but these are some of the common ones. Accept as is, which is very rare that it's accepted without you making any changes. Or accept with minor changes or minor corrections. In some cases, they say, well, major revisions are required. Sometimes they say revise and resubmit. They haven't really told you, but already you see I think they see that there is something there, but they think, you know, you really have to work on certain aspects. But of course, you know, as editors will tell you, and I've listened to a number of them, they say that even when they've asked you to revise and resubmit, it doesn't really guarantee that they are going to accept it. Chances are they will accept, but it's also possible that after a number of rounds of back and forth, if they still feel that really there is nothing that is really, we are not agreeing on how to go about this, they might end up saying, well, consider submitting it elsewhere. But that's not often the case, I would say. Then the last part is a reject, which is often the challenge now. And so that's where we are saying, how do you cope with academic rejection? Perhaps here in terms of a book or an article rejection or a chapter rejection, how do you cope with that? I must say that that rejection is hard. I think I would have done a disservice if I paint it as if it's something that can be glossed over, something easy. No, it's not. It's so hard because it feels like you have been rejected. So it can affect your confidence, your self-esteem. I've already said that. You feel sometimes demeaned. You know, I thought I'd raised these, you know, key arguments here, but they are saying no to them. So you have a choice now, either to walk away from that article. Some of you know that there are some articles that we have now parked maybe for a year or two because the comments were just something else, and we felt, okay, let me leave this one for now. I'll come back to it later. I do have one like that with a colleague, and so we need to still get back to it. But we need to learn from these kinds of experiences and bounce back. That's what I would say. I think resilience is formed in awareness of the fact that this is not something that only happens to you or because you don't think well or the quality of your work is compromised. No, in some cases, like I said, sometimes the quality is really top notch, but there are other
Dr. Kenny. Dr. Kenny, can you hear me? Dr. Kenny? Dr. Kenny, can you hear me? Sorry for that, colleagues. I think Dr. Ken is experiencing some technical difficulties. Let's just wait for him to rejoin the session. Let's just give him some couple of minutes, probably 3 or so, and then he will eventually join us back.
colleagues. I think there was a power outage here, so sorry about that. Okay, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Dr. Ken.
Okay, all right, awesome. Thank you. Sorry about that, and thank you for waiting. So let's proceed. I had said here that when your article is rejected, you can feel demeaned. There is that choice of either walking away or you learn from that experience. And I was saying that resilience is formed in awareness that it is common what I'm going through, that it's not an indictment on you, that there's something wrong with you. And so I think it helps when you have published at least one, because then you can look back and somehow say, well, and so in this case as well, many of you are now doing PhD. So it's about, but I've managed to complete my master's. So try to draw on those. My master's, 2 people reviewed, or however many reviewed your master's dissertation, and they were happy with it. So you have ideas that people find interesting. So that can also be helpful. So that's why I'm saying there's not always about the quality. So I think when that power outage happened, I was saying that as I was reading yesterday about preparing for this, there was one scholar who was saying sometimes you'll be even surprised. A very good article might be rejected because the editor of a particular journal thinks this paper might not have a number of citations. And they were saying that sometimes reviewers are more concerned about those citations. And they might say, well, based on this title and what is argued here, perhaps it won't garner a number of citations. And based on that, they might reject it. Then there's another one that maybe is not well argued compared to the other one that has been rejected, but they feel this is something that is quite trendy and it will be well received and cited and read, because they are thinking about their own community, that the readership that they have. And so there are some puzzles that may have nothing to do with you, but other elements that are beyond your control. So that, I hope, would help you as well as it helps me to think about perhaps there are other things that I'm not privy to that led to this rejection. And what I wanted to also, I'm not sure whether you can see my slides though. Can you see them?
Yes, we can see your slide, Doctor.
Okay, awesome. And I'm on now. Why do articles get rejected? And I say in brackets there, not you, not me, but articles. And I think sometimes, we get a sense that I have been rejected. No, it's not me that has been rejected. It's not you. I think it's your article that you have submitted. And I think somehow trying to remind yourself, though it is very hard to separate, the person from the object that has been done, it might also be helpful. But why do they get rejected? And I think to help us around this, I hope this will be helpful. But please feel free to jump in at any time. Don't worry, I'm almost there. I'm almost done. I'm left with a few slides. Don't worry, we won't stay until 12. I think by 20:15, we should be done. But I'm getting to something that I think might be very helpful. And so editors of a journal, for those who are not aware, so a journal will have an editor or a number of editors. Those editors are often chosen on a competitive basis. So it's like an advert that is sent out and people apply to be editors. And often these are professors, doctors, senior people in their own field. So they know about this subject that this journal is about. But these editors are sometimes conservative. And it's quite important to keep that in mind, that they are sometimes conservative. In other words, they want to preserve a particular community that they appeal to. And if that is the case, they religiously guard the boundaries of the journal. So if you submit some article that is good, an argument that is very interesting, but it goes beyond the boundaries of that particular journal, and they feel that if we publish this in our journal, we might end up offending our readership, the people that often read from our journal, then sometimes they then say, well, this is not a good fit here. You have to consider submitting it somewhere else. Again, you see, it's not really about the quality in this case, Of course, I'm not saying that sometimes the quality is not yet there. And so if the quality is not there, that's why it's important to look at those comments, really take time to read them. So what I often do is I print them, I group all these, and I put them down. The reviewer one said this, reviewer two said this, reviewer, sometimes even 4 reviewers. Look at where are they agreeing, where do they disagree, what are the central aspects, what are the key aspects that I should focus on, how do I tackle this? So there's a lot of planning that goes into it, and I need to think about it as a colleague. I'm trying to join this conversation and contribute to this particular conversation, but there are people who are saying maybe this contribution needs to be beefed up a bit, and so I need to also think about it that particular way. It's only in cases where I feel, no, I've addressed it very well in this case, maybe there's something going on here, that I can stand my ground as well and say, no, but this is the case, without being, of course, you need to be collegial in however you go about it. I should have actually, provided, like for some of you starting out, like how to respond to reviewers. Often we have even a table where you say, this person said this, the reviewer one said this, and you acknowledge, thank you for saying this, and whatever, how you have addressed that, and you can even show the page number where you have done that, and you move on each of them. Even you take those aspects which are said, this is good, was whatever, then you say, thank you very much. Because, sometimes it's easy for us to look at only the negative comments that have been provided, but often there will be even good comments that are provided by these different reviewers. So this is the editor that I'm talking about. So if they are conservative, they may guard a particular way or argument or line of thinking. But some of them, they may take a different path. And sometimes over time, they might change, because these editors also have terms. After 5 years, there might be someone new, and they might say, well, given what the different changes and the ways that these conversations are going, we are moving now to this kind of thing. And so it's important to even read up on the editors. Who is the editor of the journal that I want to send to? What do they stand for? A little bit of research on that might also help you, apart from just reading the journal. Some are open to different ideas, and they can receive things that, what I mean is that if you're writing on violence, there are different aspects of violence. Some are talking more about who is doing violence. Some are talking more about on whom violence is unleashed. And so there might be different, or how they see violence and all that. So there might be those who are open to any kind of violence, but there might be those with a narrow focus on a particular way of looking at violence. And so that might also be the reason why perhaps a particular article that they've submitted has been rejected, not because it doesn't have merit, but perhaps because it doesn't quite fit that particular discussion that they are engaged in. So editors want to know, will the argument likely be of interest to our readers? Does it add to the conversations in that particular journal? So if they feel that in terms of the journal, the conversations or the debates that have been going on in this particular journal, this particular one won't quite fit, they might say no, because they feel that it doesn't advance a particular discussion that is going on there. So this is something to also keep in mind, and I will touch on these elements as well as soon as I am done with this part here. So these are some of the reasons for rejection. And perhaps when we want to talk about bouncing back, we also need to talk about what are those reasons that articles are rejected, and then how do you then bounce back? So there's this issue around does not fit the journal. Sometimes we just get excited, we submit, and yet it doesn't quite fit there. So thinking about where this argument will find a home, quite important. Some journals are general, they publish from a wide range. I've already talked about this. What are these areas of focus in your own area? So you need to think about that. And often also what I also say is that another thing to do, I think, which is quite helpful, is to think about when you look, especially for your masters, for example, if you are to draw from your masters, and now for those who are now having your PhDs, you can draw from your PhD. I just want to be inclusive now. But what you can also do is to look at your reference list. Which journals, which articles did you use? And these articles were published in which journals? Because it might be that chances are those journals then are the places where your argument would fit, because that's, if you see in your reference list 3 or 4 articles that have the same journal, perhaps that's a place where you can submit yours. So that's quite important to note. And sometimes articles are rejected because they have a local focus. and yet you are submitting it to a journal that has more an international focus. And so this is quite important today. Even if you have a local issue, you might want to see how it can appeal to an international audience. And so there are ways to go about that that you can think about. And so once it's rejected now because of international that it lacks international focus, for example, maybe you send it to the UK, for example, and they say, well, this is interesting, but you're only talking about a particular community in South Africa, and you don't talk about how then other places can learn beyond that community and beyond South Africa. And then it's a matter of now looking at that and seeing how perhaps others have done it and what they're suggesting, then you can try to also address that. Now, any questions? I'm talking nonstop. Any questions on this?
It seems like there are no questions from the chats. I don't know if colleagues do have questions. They must just unmute themselves and ask questions. Yes,
Right.
Samson.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. And you have touched one important area that is very, very important. Talking about going beyond the boundaries of journals. It has happened to me some time back when I was trying to publish a paper that was talking about IMF and World Bank policies and interference in African, what do you call it, political issues. And I published, I don't want to mention the journal now, it may discourage others, but it depends on the situation. And I realized that I was stepping beyond the boundaries of the journal because they may not like one to talk something or to criticize the work of IMF or World Bank. So I gave the papers to senior researchers to look at, but the fact that it was going beyond the boundaries of the journal, they decided to reject it. So you have just touched a very important issue and we should be watchful. But my suggestion is this: some of these things are very important. Why not African? We should promote African journals too, so that some of these things can be read by the wider community, because some of these things are important areas. But the fact that you are targeting maybe international journal, they publish a wide range of issues, but you send it there and they realize that you are trying to target a particular institution or financial institution, but it's a reality. But we can't express that in our publications. So this is my contribution and something that I think we should look around as a
Thank you.
junior researchers.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that's very helpful. You really said it clearly, and I appreciate that. So there's politics involved as well. So again, like you said now, if you are criticizing, for example, the IMF, and that journal appeals to, perhaps it's even funded in some way by the IMF, for example, they feel, well, this argument that you are advancing, it really upsets our funders and our readership, and so they will guard that. So it's important to just figure out, where am I submitting? Who are the people there? Who are the at least you won't know perhaps the reviewers, but you will know the editors, who is on the board, the editorial board. That might give you a sense as well, so that you don't go in some other unfamiliar territory. So thank you so much for that. There was another thing that you had asked. It's about the promoting African journals as well. Interestingly, I attended a presentation on decolonizing global health. It was about global health. But then and it was hosted by UJ, and the discussion also went to the journals, that people publish. And I remember making a contribution there that, I think that particularly the senior and established researchers and professors should also promote these local journals here in Africa by publishing in them. Because, as junior, upcoming researchers, we check where these seniors in our department are publishing. And if they're only publishing in Thailand, Francis, or Routledge, then that's where we're saying, okay, let's go there as well. There is merit in doing that as well, to establish your name as well, and to show that you are not just writing. You can compete on a global level, but I think it's also important to promote the local and our own journals, and particularly the established one. And they actually agreed with me that I think it helps that they also consider promoting these local journals by, if you are a guru in that particular area and you submit in this national journal, then people feel encouraged to do the same. But yeah, the terrain is not equal, and we need to be mindful of these things and to try to ensure that knowledge is not just coming only and endorsed by the global north, but even down here, the global south, we have information that is important that we can disseminate from here going outside the boundaries of this continent. All right, thank you. I saw a comment. Do you mind reading that comment for me? There was someone says, do you encourage?
Yes.
Yes.
There is a comment from researcher. Do you recommend for novice researchers to publish alone in establishing themselves, or it's better to collaborate?
Okay. That's a very good question. All right. I don't know how to answer that very well, but I would put it this way. My thinking, and I would want to hear from the other colleagues as well. My thinking is this. It's a matter of deciding. Sometimes, perhaps when you are starting out, if you're a bit timid and you can also do it with your supervisors, you publish with them, so that you learn how to go about it. But at some point, you also have to publish alone. So there is a place to publish, depending again on the field. In some fields, it's not possible to publish alone, especially if you have done some experiments with a group of other people, and so it would be kind of a group paper. But in some cases, they want to know, what exactly are you saying yourself? And so I try to do that. I publish with other colleagues, and I like that. And I learn a lot from that, publishing with colleagues. But some I publish alone, some I publish with colleagues. Because, for example, the NRF rating that I was talking about, it's easier when you've published alone or when you are the first author, because they even want to know what contribution do you make or whatever. They want to see, are you an authority? Are you beginning to say, what is it that you are saying as an individual? So where it's possible to do that, I think it's helpful to do that. But of course, you need to learn to also collaborate with others. So it's a matter of, if, for example, you have an argument that you really feel you want to advance that argument by yourself, and I would say then go for it by yourself. There are very nice, mentors who can say, I wrote an article, for example, with one PhD, just a recent graduate, PhD graduate. And so after then, they reached out to me again and said, oh, that was before they finished. And now they said, okay, can we write another one together? I said, no. For now, I wanted to write by yourself as an individual. You can send me the document. I can make comments and all that, but I want you to be the first author and the single author for that particular. So I think it's about balancing it out, and see. But at some point, you really have to also, where it's possible, make your own comments. But I want to hear thoughts from the other colleagues. What do you think around publishing by yourself or publishing with others? So I'm saying do both, but I want to hear from, yes, go ahead, please. Thanks.
Okay. Publishing alone is not actually advisable as a junior researcher. If you collaborate with senior researchers, I think they can help you to get the idea and the line of argument and how you can integrate your discussion for a paper to be accepted. But the initial stage is, if you are writing alone and you get multiple rejection, sometimes it's discouraging. And as we're talking of resilient, if you're not strong enough to be resilient, it may discourage you in subsequent publications. But when you collaborate with other senior researchers, 1 or 2 papers, at least it will give you confidence and then give you the insight how to go about with certain areas. That's my view.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Very helpful. So you are saying you can move from that, but initially you can start by collaborating in 1 or 2 articles, so that you kind of learn the trade, how to go about it. But at some point, you need to also be able to be recognized as an authority who can also argue from start to finish. Thank you. I agree with you. Anyone else? So for masters and PhD, for example, I think at UJ, I think there is this practice that you actually publish with your supervisor. So that's a time for you to learn from your supervisor as well. You are drawing from your masters, your PhD, and you hopefully your supervisor assists you to and guides you, and you will learn to begin to see how they go about it, how they deal with the rejection, how they deal with. I was blessed or fortunate to have some people who were willing to also just guide me without adding their own names, where they felt, no, in this case, you can actually do it by yourself. And then I would write and send them. And it helped me in terms of my own independence, because at some point you need to become an independent scholar. But of course, I didn't start by publishing by myself. I started with learning with others. And even now, I still publish with other people, but I mix it. Sometimes I alone, sometimes with others and all that. So yeah, I agree with the last speaker. Okay. I think, again, it touches on where to submit, and I'll touch a little bit on that if time permits me. Where to submit. I think one would have to make a decision, and I touch on that later. Do you want to submit to these tier 1 journals, Q1 journal, top tier, journals, or you want to submit to the mid-level or the low level, but making sure, though, that they are DHET accredited journals, the upgraded or the current one. You want to avoid these predatory kind of journals. That's where, again, these established researchers will help you in guiding you to say, no, don't submit in this journal. Let's submit in this one, because they have done it before, so they can also guide you in that manner. I wanted to mention this one as well. Go ahead. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sorry to disturb you. I just wanted to ask how
Yes,
many
not at all.
times.
You're not disturbing. Yeah.
Okay. How many times is an author allowed to submit in one journal?
How many times should an author submit in one journal? Is that author allowed to submit in one journal?
Yes.
Okay. I would want to hear from the others, but I don't think there is, as far as I know, there isn't a limit, but it can be a bit concerning when you are only submitting in one journal. Then you're wondering, why this journal? Why only in this journal? Why not in other journals? Do you perhaps have a connection in that journal that allows you to just submit and publish? And so kind of mixing them up a little bit is also helpful. That's what I would say, to show that it's not just one. If you're talking about a publisher, that's different. But a journal, if I keep on submitting to one journal, I think it can be concerning. I'm not saying I can't submit 2 or 3 there. I think I can. But if I only submit to that journal, I think it becomes almost a red flag. But what do the others think? I think the same applies to if you are an editor now, you're just submitting to your own journal non-stop and you don't submit anywhere else, only in your journal. Then it becomes really concerning, because perhaps you are sending to the reviewers that you speak to and say, look, I just want to publish this one here. You see, that element that was mentioned earlier around the publish or perish, it really is affecting us as scholars, because sometimes, we are just pushed to publish a lot and not really then think about so chances are as well, like you're saying, maybe it's because this journal has a good turnaround time. Maybe it's not that there's nothing fishy about the journal or about your relationship with the the editor and the other people in that journal. But perhaps it has a good turnaround time. And now maybe you're a postdoc and you want to, for your renewal to be secured, you have to publish a number of articles. And so sometimes you end up doing that. But I would say that I would really discourage one, to publish in one journal over and over again. Yeah, I would say, yeah, I don't want to give a number, but just, unless you space it as well, that this year maybe you have, but maybe you have 2 other years you're not publishing there, you're publishing in another journals. Then later when there's need, you come back. Sometimes there are also calls for papers to be published there. And so you feel, well, this fits here. And so that's why I don't think there's a hard and fast rule, but I think you just have to use your discretion there and think about how to go about it. But anyone who has a different opinion on what I've just said now.
Okay, my observation is that some journals may feel that you are taking advantage of them. So sometimes the subsequent ones, they may feel reluctant to publish it.
They may decide not to publish them.
But the way they will handle it, you yourself, you realize that it seems you have exhausted your chance. Because they feel that you are taking advantage of them, trying to be pushing papers through.
This time I'm not sure what's going on now. Is it my side?
Hello?
We
Yes,
can
I can
hear
hear
you, Dr. Ken.
Okay. Are you done? So that it was breaking up. I didn't hear the last part. Yeah.
I'm saying sometimes some journals may feel that you are taking advantage of them, trying to be publishing, and in that case too, they try to handle the papers in a way that to discourage you.
I see. I get you. Possible. I think it's possible. Sometimes they even tell you, look, perhaps consider submitting to our sister journal. Then they send you to another journal that they know where that might fit. Yeah. So yeah, no, thanks for that. This slide here that I think it's quite important. I say here, some papers get sent back within a matter of days, what is called a desk reject. And sometimes they are good, because when you submit and within 7 days it's back to you, then you don't have to wait a month before you know the verdict. And at least now you know that it doesn't fit in this journal. Then you submit it somewhere else. Or if you need to work a little bit to revise it a bit, then you do that rather than waiting. So it can be advantageous. But sometimes that happens because there are certain things that you could have done that you have not done. Perhaps you did not conform to the conventions that they want you to conform to. And that's where the cover letter becomes very helpful, because this kind of within a matter of days is often an editor's decision. It means it hasn't gone out to a reviewer or reviewers to review your paper. Now, this becomes helpful to those who haven't submitted. So sometimes journals actually ask you for cover letters and say you have to submit a cover letter. Sometimes they do not, some do not. Now, if they do not, I would still say consider submitting a cover letter, because a cover letter is helpful to both you, the writer, and the editor who is going to receive your paper. So this cover letter, what is it? What is it about this cover letter that I'm talking about? So in the cover letter, you don't want to make it long. I mean, often in your abstract, the argument is there and everything that you have done. But in a cover letter now, you can do something else that you can't do in an abstract. So in a cover letter, you can say, dear so-and-so. It's better to actually know the name of the person, or if you can check, the name of the editor, or just say, dear editor, I hope you're well. I'm writing. I wish to submit my manuscript title. Then you provide the title of the paper. Then you provide, because you don't want to write a long one, then you write the argument. This paper argues that 1, 2, 3, 4. You provide the clear argument that this paper argues in one sentence or two. Then the next sentence you can then say, down. These are suggestions. The next sentence you could then say, this paper engages with ideas by so and so and so also published in your journal. So that means you'd have done your research to see whether there is a conversation going on in that particular journal that your own paper contributes towards. And so when you do that, the editor who screens will be able to see that, well, you have done your homework, the argument is there. You have even mentioned people there that they are considering, okay, so if it engages with this idea that we published already, chances are it adds to that conversation. Whether it agrees or disagrees, but at least there's a conversation going on there. You've done your homework. I found it to be very helpful to do that because it makes the life of the editor very easy as well. They will still read, of course, the abstract, the introduction, but they're making already a kind of an opinion to say, well, you know what you are, you have a clear argument, you know the conversation you are joining, even those that were raised maybe elsewhere, but it's clear that you know what you are doing, and so you are able to do that, whereas sometimes you're not able to even write, present some of those elements in the abstract. Anyone who has used a cover letter and who has found it helpful, is there anyone, or who has not found it helpful? Do you want to jump in here before I'm almost done with the articles? Then I move on to funding proposals and funding and all that. Then we close it off. Yeah. Anyone around cover letters? While you're thinking, so it's useful to you because it helps you clarify your thought. Because I've seen articles somewhere where they say, but we're not quite sure about the argument you are making. What exactly are you saying? Sometimes it's not clear. So if you can now say it in one sentence or two, then it's clear that you know it and it runs through now your article, hopefully. Then to the editor, they now see as well that you know what you're writing about. So that cover letter becomes helpful. It can even be 3 or 4 sentences or 5. You don't want to make it into a letter like a long essay. They don't have time to be reading. You are busy. They are also busy. This is something else they do almost as part-time often because they are professors, they are lecturing, they are whatever, working at different places. So you want to make it easy for them. You might even bold some words or some phrases in that cover letter. You have that flexibility to do that in most cases. So these editors check papers and decide potential reviewers of your paper. Now you'd have hinted already on some of those if you feel that there are some of them that. So that's another. In some case, some journals ask you to suggest possible reviewers, then they will add others. But in some cases they don't, and so that way you're also suggesting other people who could review your work. Now, if it does not fit, does not necessarily mean quality. They reject. That's a desktop reject, and I've touched on this already. So finally, as I end this one here, this part around the articles, I spoke about the editorial board to look at it. Don't just go ahead and submit. Look at it. The editor, the editorial board, check aims, objectives. What are the topics that are written about in that or published in that journal? So I'm talking about resilience and bouncing back. Perhaps your paper was rejected because you did not consider these things. So there are ways to now come back and bounce back and begin to do this. Are there papers that speak about what you are writing about? Do they agree? Do they disagree? Then it might be that this is where you can also fit in. And I spoke about the reference list. If you have a number of references that use that particular journal, perhaps that's where yours fit as well. If yours doesn't, if you never used any journal in that particular, any article from that journal, perhaps it doesn't quite fit well. Perhaps it does, but it's helpful to also draw from their own publications. Now, for emerging scholars or novice scholars, this is where we now need to check with the established scholars. I remember now recently I spoke to my host and I was saying, I want to submit this book proposal. Is this particular publisher okay? And he said to me, yes, but there's another one as well. There's this, there's that, there's that. So that becomes helpful to gain kind of, don't go it alone. Have others that work with you. All right. Then there are these examples. If I get time, I will come back to this. I want to just show you that this process can be very long. I remember submitting an article. Maybe I can do that briefly. I won't take long, but I just want to show you that this can take really long. Let's see if you check here. Let's see if you check here. I want to show you this one. No, not this one. Maybe this one. You see, I submitted it in 2022. Yeah, I submitted it in 2022 here. Decision pending 2022. Then with journal, whatever administrator out for review, decision pending, that's now June. Revision required. I wish I had more time to even tell you the comments that were sent. I don't have time now. Revision incomplete, revised manuscript submitted with whatever. It was only published this year in 2024. Look at that, 25 March 2024, but I had submitted it in February 2022. I can show you the other ones as well that, so what I'm saying though is that this process takes time. You see the revise and resubmit, but you need to have something that you believe there is something you are saying that you want to advance and that you want to provide, and that might then be helpful to you. Let's see. Okay, yeah, this is where I was. Let's see. Okay. Right. So this is the thing I was talking about. To say you need to also see yourself and consider where do you want to publish? Is it the low, mid, or top tier? But just be very careful of predatory. But at some point, you need to submit in these top tier journals as well. Nkosi, can you see my my slides?
Yes, Doc, we can see your slide.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. So this is quite important, but of course, this list is very crucial. Right, I've said quite a lot on this. Any questions on this? I'm about to finish. I'm left with about 3 slides. I just wanted to take you to the funding and fellowships, etc., because that's where we also get rejections, a number of them, I will say. Any questions on the previous one or contributions before I turn to this? This will take me about 5 minutes and I'll be done.
Yes. Can I?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Samson again.
Yeah.
I know this my question can also be another presentation, but just a brief or make it snappy. What is your views about secondary data analysis and its acceptance rate these days? Because sometimes you can present and there's a complaint that they can't see the knowledge contribution, even though you are trying to close that research gap based on what you have identified and you have elaborated the problem and the significance, and you're trying to address the gap. But still, in my view, it seems the acceptance rate is low. What is your perception about that?
Thanks for bringing that. And I agree with you. It seems that, but of course, I think it depends as well on the discipline, and at the level that you are, because sometimes some of them are, you can do a scoping review before you then go ahead and do certain other, as a, like a follow-up now, like the empirical one. So I think it depends, but I also saw that even with the OROS, when we have to capture articles at UJ, now there is that, really they want to check what is the contribution and what is it, what is different about this. And of course, it's coming from the NRF people as well, that side. So yeah, I'm not sure I'm the best person to ask, but I think there is merit to this kind of research. But like you said, there are these challenges that we are witnessing as well. Some people even say perhaps you could do them, a number of you can work on that, that those kind of secondary work, and then it helps to kind of check and all that. But yeah, I'm not fully clued up in terms of the acceptance rate and all that. I've done a few of those, but not a lot. Yeah, but I tend to agree with what you have said, but I would want to look more into that as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. So another area that requires academics to bounce back, to be resilient and to cope is around securing funding. So when I apply for, posts, different positions, one of the things they check is, have you won scholarships or funding or projects and all that? They now want people who are able to secure funding. But there's stiff competition to funding. But we do need to secure funding. But it's so hard to secure funding. So I just wanted to say that, again, almost similar to the articles, you and I are not alone. Many seasoned. Just yesterday, I was talking to a professor at one of the universities, actually a vice dean at one of the, not here at UJ, somewhere else. A vice dean at I think it's at Northwest University, and he has won a lot of scholarships. But he was saying, you'll be very lucky and blessed to win one when you have applied for 10, when you have responded to 10 calls, funding calls. And if you win one, you are he even used the word lucky, because there are moving puzzles, again, almost similar to the articles that we're talking about. It's not just about the quality. Sometimes it's because they want to only fund one and they are concerned about who is the funder. Would they be happy with this kind of project? Or maybe you have not articulated very well. So let me show you this one here. You will find this one in, and I'll give you the link to this. It's called Dealing with Rejection, and it's by Pat Thompson, Professor Pat Thompson, a very seasoned scholar. And in this case, she had invited Daniel Clether to write a blog on dealing with rejection. And this is what Clether provided in that article, in that blog rather. This is his own applications, the applications he made for funding. So look here, in 2012, he applied for this project, collaborating with the Imperial College London. The organization which was funding was this one, Leverhulme Trust. This was the amount of money, I think 217,066, I'm not sure what it's pounds or what. So now this was the amount, and you see that thumbs down. So he didn't get it. Then in 2013, so this was 2012, in 2013, again, a different one. And he didn't get it, 636,000. Didn't get this one. In 2015, didn't get 138,000. 2016, do you see this? 12, 13, 15, 16, thumbs down. 2017, thumbs down. 2017, again, another call, thumbs down. 2018, thumbs down. 2019, he wins 24,859. But do you see now what is required? This is a seasoned scholar. You can look him up, seasoned scholar. So he was saying it happens to the best of us. Don't feel that you are alone in this. One time I applied for some scholarship from some kind of funding like that, and the person would encourage me to apply. When I didn't get it 2 times in a row, I said to him, look, I don't want to keep on applying because I'm wasting a lot of time applying. Maybe this is not just for me. And he said to me, look, how do you know, those who, because I said, maybe there are those who just, manage to secure this. He said, but do you know how many times those people would have applied? He has won a number of them, but he has also lost a number. So this is just to encourage you that you are not alone. It's a process, but of course, what's important is to try to get feedback. I went to Botswana, it was last year, I think, under the Social Science Research Council. They're talking about how to craft winning proposals. And they were talking about particular things that they were saying about how do you bounce back after losing, after getting a reject, after not securing the funding. They were saying, some of you are writing as if it's for an academic proposal. Said the funding proposal is a little bit different from an academic proposal. They said, and of course, maybe this is them, but I have seen it and heard it from a number of different places as well, that in the first paragraph or the first 2 paragraphs, they often have made a decision on whether they want to fund this or not. So you don't beat about the bush, you really get straight to the point that you are trying to make. And so it helps then. How do you bounce back after? You have to check with people who have won those scholarships before. Check with those that have lost before. What did they do that made them turn this setback around? And even then, there's no guarantee that you keep on winning. In fact, yeah, I can say it without prophesying that chances are we will keep on losing some, but we will win some. So it's about having that kind of inner tenacity to keep on going even after seeing a number of setbacks. Any questions on this that I've shown here around money? Because they were even saying you need to read a lot of research on the organization again to see what is it that they are concerned about, what kind of issues are they concerned about, who won before. You can reach out to them. What are the questions that are often asked? What was the proposal like for those who won, the title, and all those kinds of things? It's helpful to check with those who have won before and to budget enough time to write something compelling. I remember one time I saw something and was just left with 2 days, and I tried to apply. But I mean, within 2 days, I was shortlisted, but finally I didn't get it. But you see, you can't. So it's important to budget enough time. If you see that there isn't time, then rather leave it. You spend time developing something. You need a month or two to really work, something. So it's about checking with those who have gone before you. What have they done? What worked for them? What didn't work for them? What would work for you? Sending it out to other colleagues to have a look. I know that sometimes we're very protective with our work. We don't want others to see, this is my work, it's a, but and then sometimes for a good reason, some people can even jump and steal ideas and all that. But, you have, people that you trust, people in your circle that you can send these things to. They can have a look and they can say, well, perhaps you need to work out 1, 2, 3, 4 things. So there are things to go around that you can do in these kind of things. Any questions on this, on the funding issue? I'm now moving to the very last slide after this. So Daniel, who wrote about this, said, actually, they presented a number of issues, said, appreciate the statistics around funding. You need to listen to the horror stories around people not getting funding. In this case here, you would see that people close to 10 years without getting, and you keep on applying. He said, understand editorial considerations, as I've mentioned before, that there are some considerations. They might want to fund one project and 10 people have applied. There might be good projects, but there's only one project that can only be financed. So there are those kinds of things. And also, this issue around the peer review, that even the review that happens for this funding, whatever, sometimes they can make mistakes, or they can be biased as well. And they can, as Samson mentioned earlier, that there are political issues involved. You might come up with a good proposal, but they feel, well, it doesn't really speak to our audience or to the funders who are funding us. And so it goes back to issues of money and power and interests and all that. So it's important to read their interest and all that. Hopefully doing all that. But again, like I said, after receiving the feedback, you often need a day or two to recover, because it really crushes you sometimes. You really hoped maybe I was going to get something. Think about me. I was even shortlisted, and we had to attend some other. It was a 2-year funded project, but then it turned out it came to nothing. But I learned from that, and it's about how do I bounce back. Any questions on this before we call it a day? Any questions on this? There are no questions. I won't talk about this community engagement. There isn't time to talk about this. But these are some of the things that also academics are engaged in, and they also have their own pressures, competing demands that will require you to be resilient, to manage your time well, to bounce back if there are some challenges. So the final reflections: an academic needs to develop a thick skin. It's really important. I know it's easier said than done, but you really need to develop that thick skin. You can't be overly offended. It comes with the terrain. they will say, well, this doesn't make sense. I think this methodology is not really up to scratch. But I might want to say something as well here, while here, to say that, people sitting in this meeting are the people that make reviews. And I would say that perhaps let's put a human face to it as well. Let's be humane in how we give our feedback. I've received some feedback which wasn't good, but the way it was presented was really helpful, and you don't have to, be super nasty in how you write. And some journals actually even say that please be collegial in the way that you write. Still write what you want to write, but in the way you package the message you want to convey, find a way that, so, just doing to others what you would want them to, because, when you receive that very horrible and you feel, you can't do something, for that whole day sometimes or two. I remember my supervisor when I was doing PhD would send me to go and explain the feedback to his masters and PhD students sometimes, because after his feedback, you would sometimes take, 2 weeks to recover, So, but we need to learn how to give feedback that is constructive, but in a manner that is respectful. These are colleagues we're dealing with. And even if it's not a colleague, I mean, it's a human being that we are talking about. And so I know that sometimes because we have pressure, we don't have enough time to be writing and to think about how to write it nicely, but I think it's something to think about. Research and innovation, it's hard work. It's not easy, but it's rewarding. So we should not give up. We should keep on going, no matter how hard it is. And community engagement, we have to be relevant to the communities we work with. And so we have to be engaged. And sometimes they don't see the need for us to be involved, but we need to try to motivate. And because you can go into a community and they reject you. And how do you then, the only option now is perhaps to do secondary research. But you need to be there, co-create knowledge with the community and other kinds of things. Right. So any questions and contributions? Sorry, I spoke nonstop today. Questions and contributions. And subtractions. Additions and subtractions. Anyone? Right. If there's no one else who has anything to say, we will call it a day. And thank you so much for your attendance and your participation. I really appreciate the time and the engagements from the colleagues. I thank you so much. Over to you, Nkosi. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kenny. That was such a very insightful workshop. We do believe and hope that the colleagues who attended also benefited from this kind of workshop. Thank you for your time in preparing. And to all the colleagues that attended, thank you. We hope this workshop was very, very helpful to you. Colleagues, I've shared the feedback evaluation. I'm asking you once again to please do fill in that in to help us organize workshop of this kind, as well as to give feedback to our facilitators as they are taking their time to give us such insightful workshops. If there are no any other questions, colleagues, you may have a lovely day further. Thank you so much, and thank you to Dr. Kenny once again.
Thank you very much, Nkosi, and thank you to everyone. I learned a lot as well from the colleagues and everyone who was contributing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and all the best.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.